Well, the Central Bank of Nigeria has suspended the processing fees on large cash deposits. The new development affects deposits above 500,000 naira for individual accounts and 3 million naira for corporate accounts. The suspension shall remain in effect until April 30, 2024. The CBN had in 2019 declared that it would begin to levy bank customers making cash deposits and withdrawals as part of its efforts to reduce cash in use. For corporate accounts, deposits money banks will charge 5% processing fees for withdrawals and 3% processing fees for lodgements of amounts above 3 million naira. Let's bring in economist Paul Alaje for more. Good to see you and thanks for your time. You know, when you see things like this, the first question is almost like policy going back and forth like a yo-yo. So the question will be, why do you think this policy reversal is coming?
I thank you so very much for having me. I think there's this clamor or concern around the country today, especially in areas that are not core businesses, business-driven communities in Nigeria, that there is scarcity of cash. For people who have seen beyond the headlines in the newspapers, they will know that people are actually groaning. There are banks today where you cannot be given in cash terms more than 5,000, 10,000 naira in those communities. Abuja is very close to the city, to the seat of power. That is not what is dominant here, even though there's some level of restriction in the FCT. Same with Lagos. But I can tell you that for most part of the state that remains, this is what the case is for most of the case. So here is it. Is it that the bank don't have enough cash? Because with this policy, central bank technically is saying, bring more cash to the covers of bank. Remember, the former governor of the central bank, Emefiele, had said that there are about over 80% of cash are outside the banking control. So what we are saying technically is bring the money back to the banking control, because if us made a leeway for people to bring in cash before there was a stop, and they say you can still bring, but you charge 3%, 5%, as the case may be. So this policy, to my mind, is the government or the central bank saying, don't worry, we don't have, perhaps we want you to bring more money without having the charge so that more cash can go to the bank vote. Although there are monetary explanation for this, but here is the real issue. I think because of the scarcity, is why the Central Bank of Nigeria is saying you can now bring your monies without having discouragement, without bringing it to the, bringing it to the bank without having any form of discouragement or concern of paying 5%, 10%, as the case may say. And you ask me, what is 500,000 naira today in dollar terms? Globally speaking, you are speaking of about 400 and something dollars. So yeah, it's so small, it's so insignificant. Not that the face value has changed, but the real value of the money has since changed. Before now, we heard that if you have more than $10,000, especially when you are traveling, you need to report it. Some 10 years ago, that was equivalent of about 3, 4, 5 million. Today, how much is it? It's about 11 million naira. That is the reality of the monies we are talking about. So perhaps central bank is thinking that most people don't have their money. Naira is becoming scarce. But we need to be very holistic in nature. A lot of people are still speculating, against the naira, putting their money in other currency. So currency that people don't want to put in their hand technically will be scarce. Where has naira disappeared to? Why are we suffering for continued rise in dollar? Why is it become the most beautiful bride that everybody wants to get married to, while naira seems to be a orphan, hungry and deprived bride that nobody wants to associate with?
Paul, why you ask those questions, which definitely are not rhetorical questions, they are questions that need answers, especially from the CBN and other economists. But again, what the people, said back then on the street when Emefiele was the governor was the scarcity was because of the policies of Emefiele at that point in time when we had the Naira redesign. So what exactly do you think is happening now? Because we've since forgotten about the Naira redesign to the extent that there is, a leeway for everyone to still use the two currencies yes, side by side. So what do you think is happening?
Well, first of all, Naira has lost its confidence. Most people don't want to hold Naira. most transactions are not happening. When you go to stores, you see people telling you technically what you are paying is going to be equivalent of certain amount in dollars, because people have lost confidence in the currency. So it's a big issue. So why are we not having it? On one hand, this policy central bank just made could also be interpreted to mean that we want to mop more cash from the circulation, so that it doesn't now read counterproductive to the intention of central bank. And that is what you have seen with most policies in Nigeria, where government is intending or policymaker intending to get a certain result, but because they have not run a simulation of the policy to be sure that this policy will achieve certain results. To my mind, honestly, I think central bank is still trying a number of policies, a number of options to see whether this will work or not. But what is obvious to many of us is that perhaps those who kept those large amount of Naira in places that were not accessible until Emefiele brought the policy and we started seeing new notes but carrying 2009, 2008. Perhaps they've taken the money back to where they used to be. And we are now having less and less of this money. President Tinubu and his team, we have to do more to make sure that those money, wherever they might have disappeared to, waiting stillingly and patiently for 2026-2027, when another economic rain will fall, which is election, of course, which of course is the major driver of our GDP. Because when you look at the GDP of Nigeria, it always grows, at least the fast, if you, and this is correct, by over 70% at pre-election year. That's when you see this money that have been eating, maybe they are bringing it. So central bank will also need to now deploy methods of following the money. When money is released to DMBs, who is getting what are they doing with it, so that they can follow it.
So how do we follow the money? Because definitely large sums with the suspension on processing fees, large sums will make the journey back to the banks. So who follows the money?
NFIU. I expect NFIU to do more. I also expect central bank to ensure that they watch so that we don't bring dirty money into our system, because this is a room for people to clean their money. And you know, the EFCC has been very vocal in ensuring that dirty money are taken out of the system. So there is need for that collaboration. I remember that a couple of months back, while EFCC, Central Bank, NFIU, these agencies of government had agreed to collaborate to ensure that they save the soul of Naira. Along the line, I think communication, we're no longer seeing that action. But EFCC has a role to play here. NFIU has a role to play here. And most importantly, the Central Bank of Nigeria has a role to play here. Because when Naira gets scarce and people are not having access to it, are we not driving people again to the parallel market to say, wait, you may not have access to the Naira, but if you have access to another currency, God forbid this is not what we want to do. But you see, this is what economics bother about. For every policy, economic policy is like playing snookers. You have a white ball. When you hit it, you are targeting if you are red or you are the other color. But what must go last is the black ball. If you hit and your black ball goes in before every other ball, it is game over. When we make policy, we must be sure that we are targeting the right ball. We are not targeting the wrong ball. Because when we target the wrong ball, I tell you, it's
and quickly before I let you go, can we say from what you've seen so far, does it look like the target is on the right ball?
Well, it is for us to look at what the numbers are saying. We are trying to unify the Naira. From 400 Naira, official rate has gone close to 1,000. At parallel market, over 1,100. How much of unification have we achieved? Inflation, 27.33%. Poverty is increasing. In fact, World Bank released in June and projected that President Tinubu may likely add 5.1 million people to poverty line. And I'm hoping that the President Tinubu will prove World Bank wrong by rolling out some of the programs they have promised in July and August, such as supporting the SME, supporting women and all of those things, so that we can reduce the impact of poverty. But you see, to make all of this, for all of this policy to work, we must ask a question: where is our dollar? How much in production are we doing? Revenue generated by NNPC, where are they going? The dollar, petrodollar that we know Nigeria for, is it really impacting us? If not, why? If yes, show me the money.
Africa's economist, Paul Alaje, many thanks for your time.
Thank you so very much.